What up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So, I am now doing my last Bond review until the new Bond movie comes out, which probably won't be for like another 2 or 3 years. 2 years, hopefully. Hopefully, it's not too long. So, the last Bond movie that I had to do was Live and Let Die. For anyone that doesn't know, Live and Let Die is a Bond movie that I grew up watching. Don't ask me why. I don't really know why this one. My best guess is that it was on Spike TV once. I watched it and I really liked it, and then I bought it on DVD, and then I watched it some more in my teens. So for me, Live and Let Die is just, it's like comfort food for me with Bond, where it's like I can go back to Live and Let Die. I know everything about it, so I really enjoy it. So I normally like doing the pros and the cons of the movie, but first let me do a brief, just give someone who's never seen the movie just a brief glimpse of the plot. Basically, there's an island. It's like its own country. There's a ambassador guy. His name is Kananga. I'm not going to get too much into it, but basically the guy has some drug scheme where he wants to basically be in charge of all the drugs in America. He wants to own all of it. And he's going to do that by giving away free samples. And then once people are hooked and all the other drug dealers are out of business because they can't compete with free, then he'll start to charge them and all that stuff. That's basically the plot. But the cool thing about it is that Jane Seymour, who is the Bond girl in this movie, she might be my favorite. And it's because of two reasons. One, because I like her innocence in her acting. And two, I like what she is, like, to the plot. She's called like the high priestess or whatever, but basically she's a tarot card reader, and she's has these abilities to be able to read the cards and decipher what they mean and everything. But the only catch is she can't like be physically attached to anyone, or she can't have. They say she can't have sex with anyone. I think it's truly she can't be physically attached to anyone. Once she does that, she breaks her connection with. I don't know what the reasoning is, but basically once she has a physical connection with a man, then she loses it. So yeah, that's basically the plot. It's James Bond trying to track down. There's some agents that have been killed, and he's trying to figure out how to connect the dots of what's going on. The cons of this film, I don't think there's anything over the top as far as like there's not some amazing Bond sequence where you're like, oh, remember that action scene? I mean, maybe the bayou chase, the boat chase, you could say is the top action scene, but I don't feel like Live and Let Die. That's not the reason why I'm here. I'm a sucker for like secret passageways and secret doors, and this movie has a fair amount of those. So like, I love that. I like that. People call this like, oh, they were just because of black exploitation films. That's what this is, and they're just going off of what was hot like in the early '70s. For me, I just think it's a different and cool idea, and like you would never think that you're going to see Bond in like Harlem, which is cool. Bond in New Orleans looks cool. Bond in the Bayou looks cool. So I'm all for all those, and I actually like the characters in this. I think the guy's name is Mr. T, but I might be wrong on that. But it's the guy with the claw or the hook or whatever. He's a good henchman in my opinion. He's one of my favorites. Yaphet Kotto that plays Kananga. He's one of my favorite Bond villains. Which I'm gonna do my Bond rankings of the movies, and then afterwards I want to do my Bond villains rankings, and then I probably want to do Bond girl rankings. And then I guess maybe I could do a James Bond ranking as far as the actors that played him, but I don't feel like that would be all too interesting because I feel like there's like a top two or three that everyone kind of agrees on. Well, there's a core four. You got Dalton and Lazenby over here, but basically the top four guys you can kind of mix and match and put whatever you want. But yeah, so like I said, cons. There's not really a ton of great action sequences. Famous lines. I don't know if we get a whole lot of famous lines, but there's some good ones. I mean, I do like at the end James being like, "Well, he always did have an inflated idea of himself or something." Susie, or is that her name? I can't remember the black girl that basically is part of. I can't remember her name. Susie Carver. I want to say was her name, but maybe I'm wrong. She plays the if you want to call her like not a nitwit, but basically she's supposed to be a CIA agent, and she doesn't really do a great job in my opinion, and her acting's a little So I didn't really care for her all that much, but aside from that, I dig everybody else, and like I said, Jane Seymour is one of my favorites. Baron Semity's in here; he's cool. But yeah, I would say Kananga really makes this movie go. His dynamic with Solitaire, and then Solitaire's dynamic with James, and James' dynamic with with him, I think are all good. Roger Moore, this is my favorite version of him, of like him doing the character, and like people talk about he really got into his own with Spy Who Loved Me. I get all that, but for me, he's got a confidence in this movie, even being his first, that I'm like really amazed with. Like, I like when he gets in there and he's like, "My name's Bond, James Bond," and he's talking to Solitaire, and he's like, "Well, you know, the card says we will be lovers." I like all that when he says like the deck was slightly stacked in my favor. He does all good work there. So for me, yeah, I don't know. You guys probably call me crazy for liking this movie as much as I do, but I think truly this one stands up. I just got done watching all the Bond movies in like the last month, and I really do think this one is one of the better ones. I think it's one of the best. It's going to be in my top 10. I know that. Yeah, so I don't know if I have really much to say. Like, I can just gush about this movie. Sheriff J.W. Pepper's in this. He does good in this. I mean, yes, looking at it now in 2023, you're like, yes, some of the stuff he said was racist. Like, this probably isn't your first time with this, or your debut with this, or whatever. But everything else, I'm like, in the 1970s, I'm like, I would buy that, like, he probably calls everybody boy. So I don't view that as just like a racist thing. I feel like he would, like, if I got stopped, he'd probably be like, you know, you picked the wrong spot to haul ass through, boy. But he's funny. He's a comical character. I do like at the end where, like, he's like, all right, you know, we got a cage for you. And the guy was like, why don't you fill your sheriff in? And he was like, hey, JW. He's like, secret agent. I like that. I like the locations in this. I guess for me, the main thing that puts it atop is Roger Moore's performance is really good. Mr. Kananga he's an intelligent villain that's got a good, I think it's a realistic but good plot. Like, you scare the locals, you have the control of this island, you scare the locals into not going anywhere near the field because of voodoo, and in actuality, you're trying to protect, I forgot exactly what they're saying. I think it's cocaine is what they're doing, but I'm not a drug expert. Maybe it's heroin, I don't know. I'm not a drug expert, so what do I know? Yeah, so that's stuff I love. And then, like I said, I think the last part is Jane Seymour is just, she's, in my opinion, might be the most beautiful Bond girl ever, just because, like, she's so innocent, which makes her so beautiful. And, like, I really do feel bad for her that she got tricked. I do feel bad for her that she's in this position, that she just, like, you know, kind of working as kind of a slave to the bad guy. And you do kind of feel bad for her when she kind of got tricked into having sex with James, like, because he said, like, you know, hey, the card says we'll be lovers. I mean, technically it did, but the last time he did it just to prove to her that, like he said, he had a full deck of just lovers cards. And I just think that whole tarot reading thing is interesting. I mean, I'm not into tarot reading cards, but I think when you do it with a Bond film that has stuff to do with voodoo, takes place like there in certain locations, I think it's cool. I think it's interesting. The opening scene where that guy dies, like, in the funeral, and he's like, whose funeral is this? And the guy's like, yours, and stabs him. I think that's cool. You go into a restaurant and, like, you get put up against a wall and it's a trap door kind of thing. I think that's cool. And then they come back to it and you're like, oh, well, James learned from the last time. It's like, they still get him. I think all that stuff's cool. So all the slow scenes, they still did a great job of, at least in my opinion, keeping my interest and keeping the audience's interest. So this was directed by Guy Hamilton, I think is the guy's name. Now, I haven't looked to see all the other Bond movies he's directed, but now that I'm, like, thinking about it, I'll do my Bond ranking. So I was going to say I could rank the Moore movies, but this one for me, I know my top two. It's this and Moonraker are my top two Roger Moore films. I know everyone loves The Spy Who Loved Me, but for me, to be honest, when I think about The Spy Who Loved Me, the villain isn't all that great, and the plot, the Bond girl, I think, is what really puts it down for me, because she creeps me out where I think she's a Terminator or a cyborg. She just always, like, Jane Seymour can act, and she can come across as scared or come across as, you know, happy, excited, whatever. The girl from The Spy Who Loved Me is just, yes, James, yes, I am your equal. I am a spy. It's just so creepy. Anyway, yeah, Live and Let Die, if I have to give it a ranking like I do with all my movies, to me, this is, I'm not going to say masterpiece, but this is solid Biodoner. This is solid James Bond classic entertainment. And I feel like after the Connery stuff, this is truly what I think allowed James Bond to keep going even after he left. because Honor Majesty's Secret Service didn't do it. Didn't do it for me. Anyway, that's it. The next video you will get will be my Bond rankings. Have a good one, guys. Bye.